Okay, hello everybody. Today's date is the 25th of June, 2021. My name is Leslie Williams. I live in San Diego, California. I am a target, victim, and activist concerning the continued criminal expeditions of what is known as gang stalking. Pay very close attention to all my statements that I make in this video. My initial statements will be on foundation. The statements that are then made after the foundation is made will be to support the entire subject matter, and then the ending statements will be will be able to then help you see why the foundation was stated, and any cooperating statements that build on it. Trust me, please, and trust me, stay with this video, because this video is going to massively help you understand some of the reported, widely, massively implicated attributes that are going on within the organized stalking, gang stalking, criminal expedition pertaining to aspects of why it's done. So, pay attention very, very carefully. Today's date, again, is June 25th, 2021. I'm standing right here outside of Vaughn's grocery store. Let's see if anything happens while I'm making this video. Let's see if anything happens that disrupts your ability to be able to hear this video in its entirety without any intrusive sound interruptions. Anything popped up in the environment or anything superimposed onto the video. I have endured that before in YouTube videos and Periscope videos. So, I do have a running recording tape recorder taking my statements as well. Let's fly right into the subject matter of this particular exposure. Now, don't my initial statements, don't assume that this video is going to be something that you're not going to be interested in as a result of you hearing my initial statements. Trust me, you'll see why these initial statements are being made as I continue to talk. All gang stalking predictions are in effect. That includes anybody bothering me in any way while I'm making this video, or at any time today outside the store, in and along my routes. Now, here we go. So, in the criminal expeditions of what is known as gang stalking, one thing this crime will do is, concerning what's reported, go to Google and research remote neural monitoring and research it extensively. Now, as a direct result of this type of technology, that's widely reported to be used in this crime, some of the features and functions of remote neural monitoring are, but not limited to, being able to remotely neurally choreograph the biomagnetic resonance frequency of each individual's brain, which is unique in each individual's brain, just like a fingerprint is unique. But you should also understand and know that brain entrainment and the creation of and the brain entrainment of neural pathways and neural networks are also one of the main reported motivations of why this demonic technology is being used by absolutely criminally insane wild animals who are directly implicated to be connected to and hosting this crime in order to achieve any and all criminal motivations by and through perpetrating the methodologies that assist them in then achieving the criminal motivations. So let's go back just for a second here. It's reported R&M is being used against their selected individuals in order to brain map that victim's biomagnetic resonance frequency of their brain, and then of course to identify any potentiated frequency outputs of any intentionally created and reinforced neural pathways and neural networks that are achieved by and through, but not limited to, the community-based gang stalking, where the victim is forced to have thinking responses and emotion responses based on any harassment, staged events, provocations, accusations, harassment, you name it. Anything and everything that is propped up through the community-based harassment connected to this crime. Because entrainment is the goal. So, now, it's reported that one of the main ways that this technology is able to remotely neurally interface with its victims is by and through, once they identify the biomagnetic resonance frequency of the brain itself, what they do then, because these frequencies, the biomagnetic resonance frequency, it's about inductance. Basically, the inductance when the brain is processing certain neurological processes, those neurological processes produce what is known as inductive reactance related to the evoked potentials. Now, as a direct result, these individuals can remotely neurally monitor and decipher those evoked potentials, which give out frequencies. Once those frequencies are identified, they are mathematically equated and put in an extremely sophisticated computer software program that has already been intentionally programmed to be able to, where the software itself is designed so that it perpetrates the function of what the software is. So, as an example, if you look at an electrical circuit, whether it be series circuit, parallel circuit, combination circuit, those circuits are created so that the devices that are put within the circuits, resistors, capacitors, diodes, and everything, serve their particular function so that the specific amount of current and voltage that is put through it achieves the objective by the time the current and voltage processes through the components and then the circuitry itself. So it's almost like the same concept when you look at, let's just say, a series circuit, a parallel circuit within electronics. If you put a certain current flow through it and then put a resistor on it, when the current flows through the resistor, it's then going to impose a certain amount of resistance onto that current so that a desired current result will flow past the resistor that is tweaked so that that current that ends up flowing through the resistor has been tweaked so that not the same current flow is coming out of it that went into it. That is because as the current comes out of that resistor is now tweaked to cause a specific different current output from the resistor, is because when that certain amount of adjusted current that comes out of the resistor will now interface with digital electronics that needs only that current flow at that point in time within the circuitry. Well, with remote neural monitoring, once they are able to decipher the magnetic resonance frequency of the brain, they then use certain mathematical algorithms, okay, that they can then put in the software, and then so that then the additional things that are going on concerning how remote neural monitoring is interfacing with the brain, which can absolutely include, listen to this, if you can covertly put nanotechnology within the brain, which it's widely reported that they're doing, the nanotechnology is designed in order so that it travels along the synaptic processes so that it travels along the neuronal processes as the brain is processing information along the synaptic gaps. Now, if you went to Google and you typed in at Google, EEG space, press the space bar on your keyboard, EEGs, like when you go to a hospital and get hooked up to an EEG machine. If you went to Google and typed in EEG and then press the space bar on your keyboard and then type in auditorial and then press the space on your the space bar on your keyboard again and then typed in visual stimuli, you will come up with articles that show that one of the main functions of EEG machines is where that when the person is hooked up to one and then they're presented with auditorial stimuli, a song, a word, a phrase, a statement, when they see certain visual stimuli, a picture, a person, an object, the brain then starts processing what the person hears and sees. The EEG is able to determine the neuronal processing of this stimuli, but it has a real hard time in processing how the brain itself interprets it at the synaptic level. It's only showing a specific EEG readout pertaining to the brain recognizing it. So what does remote neural monitoring need to do in order to neurally decode what the synaptic processes are processing as complex stimuli is being presented and as visual and auditorial stimuli is being presented? Meaning that they're looking to see how the brain is interpreting, the variables that are connected to the interpretation, the brain's interpretation of what the stimuli is, and any complex attributes that might also be attached to the stimuli. It's only able to, process the rudimentary aspects of the stimuli, the general aspects of it, but it has an extremely hard time in deciphering the complex attributes and variables attached to the stimuli. So what's needed to be in between the remote neural monitoring and the synaptic gaps of the victim as the victim is processing these more complex attributes of the stimuli, they need a buffer that will assist them in helping them decode the neuronal processes of the attributes and variables that are attached to the stimuli. That's then why they put nanotech in the brain. So the nanotech, which is pre-programmed to flow through the neuronal processes as the information is deciphering the attributes and variables, that nanotechnology then will interpret it by and through photonic signals. The photonic signals that are part of the neuronal processes and the photonic signals that are incorporated within the internal makeup of the nanotech itself. Therefore, it acts as a decoder. And these nanotechnologies can also be encoded, so that whatever is encoded upon it can be deciphered by and through the photonic signal processing as the encoded information is processed along the neuronal processes, along the synaptic gap. Now, I know that sounds a little bit sophisticated, but check this out. They need that in-between nanotech in order to be able to, again, identify the attributes and the complex variables connected to the stimuli. Because again, the EEG machine is only able to interpret general stuff. Now, one of the reasons why this is important is because in Gangstalking crimes, these 6 satanic mass murdering wild animals who are hosting this crime are forcing upon the victim through the community-based harassment and any type of neurological influencing that can be done concerning what's reported that can be done through voice to skull with voice morphine, the interpretation of stimuli that are intentionally propped up for the victim to see and or hear, visual and auditorial stimuli, there you go. So what these little satanic rats need, again, is the nanotech, so that when the brain is processing what they're forced to see and or hear, that can be more distinguishably, deciphered. Now, through the community-based harassment, the victim starts to become entrained to the stimuli, because the identical stimuli is propped up every freaking day, every chance they get. So they gotta force the brain to process it. The only way they can force the brain to see and or hear something is to force the brain to process it. Okay? Now, that's a huge aspect of why the community-based harassment is propped up to begin with. They use the harassment, the visual stimuli, the auditory stimuli, as an identifier. And since what's propped up is almost identical every day, it then becomes what is known as pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is essential in order so that when the stimuli is propped up, the brain will recognize it because there's a pattern associated to it, which is why the identical props are propped up every day. Identical means a pattern. The brain recognizes it, pattern recognition, it processes the pattern. The brain breaks it down and deciphers its meaning. The nanotech helps them see the deciphering of it. So, in order for them to dial up the brain so they can then monitor the brain as it's processing this stuff, they got to be able to assign a extremely sophisticated type of number, mathematically equated number, so that the remote neural monitoring can dial up the victim as a result of them placing another mathematically equated number within the software system that is modulated to fit with that biomagnetic resonance frequency output of the biomagnetic resonance frequency itself. So basically, it's like connecting 2 wires together. They assign a mathematically equated equation to a frequency output that is sent to the victim that is designed to neurally latch onto the victim, mathematically equated biomagnetic resonance frequency of the brain. So if you can imagine 2 wires coming together, one wire being the signal they're sending to the victim, the other wire being the signal that is being emitted from the brain. So they're dialing up the victim. Do you think that this might have any direct meaning to why it's reported that when gangstalking perpetrators talk amongst themselves about this crime and the program itself, they will literally call it The Matrix? Look at the movie The Matrix. The movie The Matrix literally shows a human brain being dialed up for mind uploading and downloading and neural encoding and decoding, so that the neural encoding can be placed within a simulated reality matrix, okay, virtual reality environment. And you should also go to YouTube and type in the YouTube channel a simulated reality neural link and look for any video. And the reason why I say neural link is because when you type in at YouTube search box the YouTube channel a simulated reality, but also type in neural link or target individuals, that way you'll know you'll come to the right YouTube channel that is titled a simulated reality. Watch any and all their videos and your mind is going to be blown. You will literally never see this planet again in the same exact identical way that you currently see it now. And by the way, what do you think all those Hollywood movies were about? Listen closely. The movie Avatar was about mind uploading. Mind uploading one person's consciousness into a synthetic biology. That's a fucking Lulu. What do you think the movie Matrix was about? Mind uploading into a simulated reality software program. That's a fucking Lulu. Because what you gotta understand here is that another thing. Most people don't know this. When you have electrons flowing, when you have an electron flying around in the air, radio frequency flying around the air, that radio frequency, any electron, any photon, any proton can be mirrored. So that electron can be at two places at once. So if they can identify the photonic signal processing of the not only the biomagnetic resonance frequency of the brain, they can identify it and then mirror it, so that when they put the mirrored photonic signal into a program, while they still got the victim hooked up to a computer by and through them neurally hacking that original photonic signal, they can then take the mirrored one, put it into a program, into the computer, and a program within it, so that when the program is started, like a virtual reality landscape, whatever is in that virtual reality landscape, it can then it can then place that photonic signal within the program, so that the photonic signal is absorbing what the program is. And since it's a mirrored photon, what they can do then is, at the same time the program is running, they can take the photonic signal output of the victim's biomagnetic resonance frequency, so that when they start the program, the victim is able to see the landscape of it in their own mind. Again, go to YouTube and type in a simulated reality. Now, trust me when I say, I know this all sounds crazy, but what do you think that if you were to buy a very sophisticated virtual reality headgear set, and then you press play on the computer that it's interfacing with through wireless technology, Wi-Fi, whatever you see in those virtual reality, augmented reality headgear that you put on your eyes, you're literally seeing a visual landscape in your eye through the retinal nerve to the optical nerve to the visual cortex. Well, it's the same concept. Why do you think one of the main ways remote neural monitoring is being used by and through sending imagery, visual streams, still frame imagery, and visual streams, visual sequential streams, like when you watch a movie, that's a visual sequential stream to the visual cortex of the victim. So if they're able to neurally hack the auditory cortex, the visual cortex, okay, and the neuronal processes of the unconscious, subconscious, preconscious, and conscious layers of the brain, then they can then force that brain to see and experience anything that is within the program that they got tied to the brain. Welcome to the Matrix. Now, consider this. When they engage in neural hacking, by and through not just hacking onto the biomagnetic resonance frequency of the brain, but they can also intentionally create and train pathways and neural networks, identify those potentiated frequency outputs, and then stimulating them by propping up a stimuli that's related to that particular entrained pathway and or neural network. Once the brain identifies it, the potentiated frequency output from it starts to vibrate. Now the stimuli is propped up in order to cause it to fire, so it starts vibrating, so then R&M can send a modulated frequency to it, so they can neurally hack into the victim's neural processes through that modality. All of the entrainment takes place by and through, but not limited to, the community-based harassment and any neural technology that can interface with the victim auditorily or visually remote neural monitoring, auditorily through voice-to-skull, ELF broadcasting, holosonics, and anything else. These wild demonic horrors can cause the victim to perceive through their senses. eyes, and ears. Absolutely, baby cakes, munchkin butts, and sweethearts. So what we got here is a bunch of wild, demonic, genocidal, mass murdering, human trafficking, raping, gang raping, murdering whores, intentionally neurally hacking victims in order to create what is known, in order to additionally, many motives for this tech, in order to create what is known as trauma loops. When you look at when you look at a series circuit, you got at one end of it, you got the power source, and then you might have some resistors in it, maybe some capacitors in it. But once that power source is turned on, it's going to then flow, the current's going to flow through the circuit, and it's going to achieve its desired output as a result of it going through the components that have been placed in it. Is this not so? Same thing concerning R&M. When the victim is neurally hacked, they're neurally hacking the victim for motives. And what is an entrained neural loop? A neurally looped entrained pathway, where that pathway is only created in order so that specific mental thoughts and emotions are experienced within that loop. Let me give you a fast example. Say if you have a neighbor who's living, say if you got a person who's living in a somewhat bad neighborhood, and then they hear through their neighbor that a specific person is breaking into people's homes. And then that person who's hearing it is going to remember it because he knows what that person looks like, the person who's being accused of doing it. He's got a visual representation of that person. So then, therefore, that becomes a visual anchor and a visual memory. So let's say then if the person who's been told it is washing his dishes in his kitchen, and right in front of his sink is a window, and then the guy that walks by that he has been told is breaking into people's homes, as soon as he sees that guy walk by, it's going to stimulate that visual memory. And therefore, it's going to reinforce that entrained pathway that's associated to the information that he was told. Therefore, every single time that person sees that other person, it's going to continue to excite that visual memory. So if you see that person 60 times in 3 months, that's going to be then a very visual entrained pathway. That visually entrained pathway will then create what is known as a very potentiated frequency output from it. Therefore, any single time that person is propped up, it will stimulate that neural pathway and keep that potentiated frequency output very potentiated. Okay? If you have a specific wedding song on your wedding day that took place in 1980, and then in 2021, you get in your car and you turn on the radio and that song comes on, it's going to stimulate that memory of your wedding day. That's what is called as a residual memory, a long-term memory. Gangstalking intentionally creates memories so they can use these visual memories and auditory memories as an anchor for a reference, so that whenever the stimuli is propped up, what it does is that it reinforces the entrained pathway that the memory is connected to. And every time it reinforces it, it potentiates the frequency output from it, making it easier for that potentiated frequency output to fire anytime the associated stimuli is propped up to it. Welcome to And No Truth.
Legacy programming, so that's what I'm talking about when I say neuroprogramming. Well, what they need you to do is after they're able to determine, after they're able to try and convince you that the responses are your own, they need you to complete or describe that reference, that memory, okay, by making the appropriate, verbalization of related action. That's verification, okay, that's the verification process. They need you to, that's why it's so important they establish line of sight, either electronically or visually, okay? And they have ways of doing it. I mean, the technology, people think they're using cameras. They're not using cameras. They're using telemetry. Cameras, it's just too difficult to maintain and operate such systems. I'm not saying they don't use cameras. They do, okay? But, they're using other forms of surveillance, such as extremely sophisticated forms of surveillance, such as telemetry, where they're able to use microwaves to illuminate the entire house of the victim, for example, and turn the victim's walls of the house into glass. They can see inside in 3D color. Everything that's happening here, everything that's happening. It's called telemetry. So the system is basically designed to constantly attack you with torture, directed energy torture, sleep deprivation torture, etc., to disrupt your continuity of thought and to erase short-term active memory. That's how this technology is designed to work. And use the sleep deprivation torture, for example, directed energy torture to torture the victim in the near incoherency, where the victim can no longer recognize modification of their active memory and fight back against the system's influences. That's how the technology is designed to work. So the simple definition of remote neural monitoring and remote neural manipulation is just that. Cataloging and collecting data regarding your memory references. That's remote. Now, it's much more complicated than that. I'm making it simple. Remote neural monitoring is the cataloging and collecting and cataloging of data regarding your memory references. Memories. Remote neural manipulation is the ability of the system to predict and influence those, to predict and influence your memories during thought composition, your active memory, your short-term memory, to deceive and manipulate you, to pitch you into some type of extra access sequence. So this RNM supercomputers basically monitoring and manipulating all electromagnetic activity of your brain 24 hours a day. It uses physical and psychological trauma to map out and reverse engineer, again, the sensory and neural pathways of the victim's brain and central nervous system as it builds this cognitive model to one day, complete and achieve direct behavioral control over the victim. People don't understand that the system can fool you. The system, you need to understand. You need to have a basic understanding of the technology and understanding the memory attacks, blocking your real memories. That's what memory management is. A second category of mind control. All mind control falls into three categories: censorship, memory management, direct behavioral control. Well, memory management is just blocking your real memories and injecting with fabricated and falsified memories. But the ability of the victim to identify that it's happening is key. It's called reading.
Now, so the falsified memories can be many different things, and trust me, they can create falsified memories because of the sophisticated types of visual equipment that they have, where they can create software programs, including, you should research electronic synthetic dreams and Gangstalking. That's all done through remote neural monitoring, with also the widely reported assistance of as well as voice is called with voice morphing, because when your physical representation is put into a visual software, and then they put other people's physical representation in it, along with like maybe environments like buildings, which is also, remember the movie The Matrix? Okay? So then they can then manage and steer the storyline, and so that when they create this visual production and then transmit it into the visual cortex of the victim, it's also got to have audio dialogue, including tricking the victim into believing that that when they see their visual imagery acting within the synthetic dream, which is nothing but a visual production, they got to make the victim believe that their role playing within the visual production is their own by using what is known as voice is called with voice morphing, which is integrated in it within part of the storyline. So if they can do that, you honestly think that they cannot trick you into believing that you're having a real memory when it's actually nothing but a created visual memory that they can streamline into the visual cortex. See, these little satanic, filthy whores that are hosting this crime, they don't give a shit about anybody. They don't give a shit about you. They don't care about an infant. They don't care about a child, an adult, a teenager, an elderly person, or anybody. They don't care at all. They're here to entrain you to create neural entrained loops where it's just nothing but where it's one line of thinking one line of emotion responses based on whatever they're anchoring into your life through actions, stimuli, actions that have negative effects. What am I enduring right now through Simple Mobile concerning both my phones? Something that only Simple Mobile can create. How are you going to know what's happening to me if I can't use a fucking phone in order to make a video to expose it? And how can I use my phone to expose it if my phone's become inoperable, or some normal apparent excuse is used in order so that I can no longer use the phone or use this phone service? Now, do you honestly believe, since it was widely reported, massively widely reported, that certain intelligence agencies have and always have been privately colluding with cell phone companies? And I'm not making that statement related to any issue that may or may not be happening to me, but what I am saying is that you can easily at any time research it. Anytime, just research it, baby cakes and munchkin butts. Excuse me, please. Absolutely. Because you got to remember, what is interfacing with the victim's neurological and biological systems? A specific type, a very sophisticated type of phone. And you can also go to Google and type in the neural phone and Gangstalking. Once they have that biomagnetic resonance frequency of the brain figured out, they assign a specific unique type of mathematically equated number to it, put that number in a device, including a computer, and then send a modulated signal to the brain that's within the same radio frequency spectrum of the mathematically equated biomagnetic resonance frequency of the brain. That way, it's like connecting two wires together, and then you've got neural hacking for neural influencing to set the victim up to then exploit the victim at any and all times concerning any and all issues concerning where they want the victim to end up at, including in slavery. Do you think it's an accident 70% of victims are women, including single mothers? I made this video to inform to expose truth, because truth in this concerning this crime, not one victim is safe through ignorance. You're not even safe when you know about all this. Go to Google and type in memory blanking. Even when you know all this shit, they can still influence you to act out during a staged event, because they can engage in what is known as thought interruption and memory blanking during the event while they're using V2K with voice warping on you to make you think you're having a thought about how to respond to the event. Welcome to these 6 satanic mass murdering animals. They will do anything and everything and use anybody and anybody at any and all times, anywhere, in order to achieve any and all subcrimes, crimes, and continued crimes. My name is Leslie Williams. Today's exposure was a direct payback to the wild satanic horrors who have been committing this crime against me in my personal life, my property, my money, my finances, my relationships. And these lying satanic rats will say anything and use anybody to claim you're mentally ill. Google and research all my descriptions in-depthly, meticulously, with a mature patient posture, and you will see truth. As a fucking Lulu, you will. You'll see it everywhere, in any and all exposures. By researching this shit, picking it apart, connecting the dots, putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And then when you research gangstalking victims' exposures and doctors and scientists' exposures, baby takes every little bit of information as a piece of the puzzle. No wild animal has got a right to come into your life non-consensually, tear it the hell down, every aspect of it, torture the shit out of you in order to create entrained pathways, and then fucking take the potential frequency output of those entrained pathways so they can then excite them through a stimuli to neurally hack you in real time so they can neurally influence your behavior to act out so they can set you up. Paybacks are a fucking bitch. Everybody have a good day. Research what I stated, and you will know truth.